how you feel you look can often impact your confidence.
That is so true. And actually, many people can find that the self-esteem is negatively impacted by unsightly and sometimes itchy and painful varicose veins and thread veins.
And that's why we're actually so pleased to share that this episode is being sponsored by veincentre.com. And they're able to help those listeners who find that they have to hide the legs through summer months or even have to cover their facial thread veins with makeup.
If that's you, just take a look at veincentre.com.
I just want to be normal. I hear that so many times. And the truth is that when people are saying they want to be normal, they're comparing themselves to perfect, and perfect just doesn't exist. And then isn't it any wonder that people become really frustrated and feel that they're abnormal because they can't be perfect and perfect doesn't exist?
Yeah, but striving for normal, what is normality? Because you can look at someone and think they've got it all together. But actually, if you're inside their head, you'd realise most people falling apart because everybody's carrying something.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think everybody just needs to give themselves a break because we've all got something, you know, we've all had issues, we've all had things that have happened to us and
still have.
Yeah,
you know, still do,
still
because life's what it is. Every day it can throw something at you.
Yeah.
And just give yourself a break. And I suppose we're talking about acceptance here as well, aren't we? Things happen.
Yeah, they do. I mean, like if I was to look at the things that, like people look at me and go, oh, you know, I'm a therapist, so everything should be fine. But I do still have issues, you know, sometimes with confidence. And although I've not got any fears anymore, you know, I have had a phobia of spiders, claustrophobia, fear of heights. There's a few of them, isn't there? There's a bit of a PTSD, eating disorder. But yeah, I mean, those are things that I've battled with through my life.
But you know what? Same battle, but it's life.
Of course it
is. You know, and the older you are, potentially the more things that you've picked up along the way.
Yeah. So what you two? So everybody might look at you. I mean, like Liv, everybody says you're so beautiful, which you are.
Thank you very much.
And then, but they go, oh, you know, she's so lucky. Everything's perfect in her life, and is it?
No, and I don't think it is for anyone. I think that's, you know, a problem that comes a lot from social media nowadays as well.
True.
Is that we perceive other people's lives to be perfect. And the truth is there is no such thing as perfect. And, you know, the things that we put value on, like, you know, for example, money. If we had money, then things would be better. Actually really don't make people happy. And so we compare ourselves to these ideal lives that we think are ideal, but even if we had that life, we still wouldn't feel perfect. And that in itself can, you know, be a problem, is that people can get things that they think would make their life perfect and then they don't feel happy and think there's something wrong with them. But the truth is that we're comparing ourselves to these ideals, like you said, perfection, and nobody is perfect. Everybody has struggles.
And I think as well, a lot of people assume that me and you especially if you have any issues, my dad will just sort it out for us straight away. And like, there's been so many times in my life where if you weren't in the profession that you're in, I don't know what I would have done. I would have really struggled. But I mean, I had to come home early from college two weeks before the end of the semester because I was struggling so much. And just things happen, you know, like you don't even realize necessarily things have happened in the past that affect you. And it just all came up at that one time.
Interesting, isn't it? That I think that people probably would look at you, Hunter, and go, oh, there he is, he's in America, he's so lucky, and he's studying, and life's great. But yeah, you were struggling. And what I love, actually, about a young person combo is that you actually said, I am struggling here.
Yeah.
I'm finding this really difficult. I'm away from home. I'm having mental health issues, and I need to come back. And what was lovely, and I can't take credit because Dad jumped in with the Dad Clinic, and started sprinkling the head.
But it's right, and I suppose that's something that I've instilled in Hunter from a young age, that you've got to speak out, and that's a big problem with men in general. You know, this old perception is you're the breadwinner, you're responsible for all these things, you should hold it all in, and talking about your mental health is a weakness, which is, absolutely wrong.
No, and I think that you made a really good point. You said a lot of people would look at Hunter and say, he's so lucky, he's away studying, and he is lucky, that's true, but it doesn't mean that anyone's immune to life, right? So there's nothing wrong with talking about mental health struggles, because nobody is immune to life, and all our brains work the same, and we're all at the same risk of struggling with things. So it doesn't matter whether you've got the best life or the worst life, you're still going to experience things that are going to be difficult. We all experience things like grief and loss and these normal human things that are difficult for anyone to go through. And I think what you were saying before about a lot of people, assume that we must never struggle because of what you two do. And I suppose we are very lucky with what you two do, but it doesn't prevent us from having difficulties. It just gives us the tools to be able to deal with them better, which is obviously what we try and share as a family.
Well, and that's what I'm really excited about with the podcast, actually. Well, I'm so pleased to have you two on board, because I think that it's always like me and your dad, but to have that kind of different angle, because I think this is it, isn't it? So there is no handbook to life, which, it'd be great if there was. And I always say to other parents as well that, you two didn't come into this world with an instruction manual. And sometimes I wish you had.
But no one does.
No, and we all make, and we do, as parents, we do make mistakes, and we always say, we held our hands up, Liv was the practice child.
Oh, thanks.
That's why I'm so perfect.
Yeah. But you know what? With the best of intentions, giving any child a message, the child can interpret it and even, in the wrong way, but in a completely opposite way to how you were trying to deliver it.
There's also so much in life that you just can't control as parents. I mean, a lot of things that happened to me happened at school or just in general life, and you just can't control that.
That is, I've got to say, as a parent, I think we can all say that is a scary thing.
Yeah.
That you sort of want to protect your kids, but you can't. You just can't be with them. And I think what's really weird, Hunter, is that when you went to America, I must have had some sort of, I must have felt through our conversations that something wasn't right, because I was like beside myself that when you left. I was a mess, wasn't I?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it was awful. And yet when you came...
But again, we're talking about giving a break here. You've got to accept that Hunter had spent 18 years of his life with us, and then suddenly he's not just going to university, but he's thousands of miles away. And I think that, again, you've got to consider that.
And in the same way, Hunter should give himself a break, because, he's doing something massive. And, you can't think that if that's difficult in some ways or you struggle in some ways, that's a problem with Hunter. That's just normal life. He's doing something amazing. I can't
tell you the amount of people that have said to me, I can't believe that at the age of 18 that your son is not only going to university, but in a totally different country with people he doesn't know anyone.
Yeah.
And how amazing and brave he is.
Yeah. And I think we lose sight of the things that we are doing. We focus a lot on the things that we feel we're doing wrong or we're not doing good enough, and we tend not to focus on how well we are actually doing.
Yeah,
and
true.
You said about comparing yourself to perfect. We therefore, this perfect that doesn't exist, we therefore only focus on the things that we're not doing or the things we're doing wrong, rather than going, look how great it is, that I've done this.
Absolutely.
And
which
focus
again,
on those good things.
This is why I feel that when a child is born, this is my new thing. This is my new thing, right, guys?
Well, go for it.
Right. So I think that when a child is born, right?
That sounds. I thought you were going to sing that.
When a child is born. But anyway, when a child is born, what I think is, right, so you go and register the birth. I bet you have to do it online now. You used to do it in person. I don't know. I mean, I've not had one of you guys for ages.
No. One of you.
Yeah.
Like
Actually,
a multitude.
Actually, you were in the hospital. I went and did it.
There you go.
Yes.
But when you register the birth of a child, right, I feel that every child born as you register should get a book, like a scrapbook or a big thick book, to document all these amazing things, right? Because we take them for granted. For example, when you first learn to drive and you pass your driving test and you go, oh my God, this is amazing. I just love it. This is brilliant. And like, how long does that euphoria last? You lose sight of what you had to do to achieve that. Getting 10 out of 10 in your times tables, when you've been trying and working hard.
But and you're absolutely right. But one thing that goes against that is we're also taught from a young age, don't brag. Right, don't make other people feel bad, but it's just part of life. Don't make other people feel bad.
You see, that grinds my gears a bit. I'm going to put it out there. But if at birth, every person was given a book, and we could document all the things that you go through, because then we've got this whole book of our achievements that tells us not only how far we've come, but also it gives us kind of a little nudge and a reminder of the journey we took. Now, you
Great idea.
You two have drawers full of yours. Have you ever? Do you know that you've got that? You've got.
I know mine is. Have you got one?
Yeah.
I hope I've got one if you've got one.
Yeah.
Be a bit unfair, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Actually, I'm gonna put it out there. You got a diary from the moment I found out I was pregnant till you were about a year old. I couldn't be bothered when it came to you, to be honest.
Wow.
I was just too busy. Liv was hard work. No, she wasn't. I was just too busy. I was working, whatever. But what I did do then as a difference was I kept this memory drawer for you, which I've still got to this day.
Can I just remind you that this is the Handbook of Happiness, and Hunter's right on the floor now because you couldn't be bothered doing that for him. You know, it's like
Already?
What?
What,
Are
10
we-
minutes
we-
in, you shot me
Yeah.
down here.
Which podcast are we recording here?
But
Yeah.
I do think not just with parenting that's a good idea, but for anyone listening, that's a good idea.
And
you know,
it's
to
never
write
too
those
late.
things down.
Never too late to start, is it?
No,
You can start
absolutely
your
not. But we
achievement book
lose.
now.
You said you made a really good point. We lose sight of our achievements, and we often just move on from them very quickly, like you passing your driving test. And if we really wrote those things down and actually took a moment to reflect on how much we've done, I think that would really help everybody to feel a lot better in themselves.
Yeah, but equally, then bringing it all the way back again, that kind of goes back to where we started, that we feel unfulfilled because we're always trying to compare ourselves to perfect. Are we not? So even when we do achieve something, instead of going, oh my God, I did this is amazing, we'll go, yeah, okay, well, yeah, you know, I did go to Spain, but Sheila down the road went to Australia. And we kind of then feel like we've not quite got to where we want to be.
Yeah, and the problem is because we don't know what that perfect is.
Well,
No.
this is true too.
And I read a really interesting research paper on perfection.
Science corner.
Sorry, science coming in.
It's coming in.
But no, I read a really interesting research paper not too long ago about perfection, and it was basically explaining that we do just that, and we tend to focus on our own failures or things we didn't do quite as well as we would have liked. But yet, when you think about it, we never really focus on others' failures, we focus on their successes. So the issue
true.
we've got is this big gap between comparing, you know, our failures to Sheila. Do you say Sheila?
Sheila down the
Sheila's
road.
successes.
Yes.
But what we're not seeing is Sheila's failures, because we don't really share our failures, do we? Because
No.
we're embarrassed about them, we don't want to talk about them, which is fine. But then all we do see on the likes of social media, or we hear about others and what people share, is their good stuff. So we're thinking, oh my God, their life's so brilliant, and comparing their good stuff to the things that we're feeling inadequate about,
But
which
it's
makes
not
us
even
feel
the
bad.
bad things as well, but just everything on in their day-to-day life.
Absolutely,
On social
yeah.
media, it looks like they're doing all this amazing stuff, and in reality, they can just be going about their life much
Yeah,
like any
but
other
you don't
time.
share
You
that.
don't see that just going to 9
Because
to 5.
I think we're
and-
trying to prove ourselves as well, aren't we? So we try and tell everyone how great we are to try and make ourselves feel better, but we don't share the bad bits because that makes us feel bad.
Yeah.
But like it said, it leads to that sort of gap between us comparing the things that we see as bad to other people's what we see as perfection, and that's why we feel bad about ourselves and don't feel happy.
See, I genuinely, and you guys know this, that, you know, I went through a lot of challenges in my life. And I genuinely mean it when I say, and I'm sure sometimes people think, what's she talking about? But I genuinely believe, and I'm very grateful that I did face the challenges that I faced in my life, because I know that a lot of people look at us, look at me, and go, "Oh my God, you know, you've got this perfect life, and you've got everything is in place, and you're confident, and you've got no issues, and all this kind of thing." But that's only because these sort of attributes that I now have are only because I learned through having challenges thrown in my
But
way.
given the choice, you would have rather not had them.
Do you know what? I actually don't know. I know that might sound really controversial, but I don't know if I can answer that, Nick, because the truth is that I am a better therapist because of what I went through.
And I would say the same, you know, because sometimes I hear things in therapy that I feel in a way, wish I could relate to. And I don't mean that in a sense of course, I would never wish to go through those things, but I wish I had the ability to be able to say, totally get it, because I've been through that. And I think that that's one thing that you bring when you're dealing with people with similar issues to things you've been through, is because you had such a challenge in life, you can relate to that and make people feel better because you've been through it, and look where you are now and the things that you've been through.
And the truth is, though, I am no different to anybody else, but because of the challenges that I went through, you know, sort of there was domestic violence, there was a sort of latchkey kid scenario that, you know, must stress there that was just necessity as opposed to a choice, of course. But, you know, bullying. Wow, like so badly bullied.
I mean, that I think we can all relate to.
I do.
right?
I think even you were bullied at
I've
school.
got bullied
weren't
at school.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
all
we've
of
still
us.
all been through things. I just think obviously you've been through significantly.
I sort of
a lot
think
more.
that to a degree it was just it's part of school life being bullied.
Sadly,
Is it
Sadly,
not?
yeah.
It shouldn't be, but it sadly it is. Did
Yeah.
you get bullied much, Hunter?
Not that much,
That's
I don't
good.
think. Not as much as I know you guys did. But still, I mean, there's always the social pressures socially and just conforming. If you don't, and there's always some kind of backlash to that, I think, as well.
Yeah, no,
But
but
there's always there to some extent.
But going back to what you said there, Nick, that the reason that I can't say that I wish it hadn't happened is because I know that me being able to understand helps me to help other people. But also just when, like even at our workshops where I will say, this is what happened, this is the things that I went through in life, I know that strikes a chord with people, making them feel more able to speak to me because they were.
Totally.
You
I
can see
totally
that
agree.
face, like, oh, it's not just me.
Do you know what, Eva? I really understand that, but I think an important point is that we can only see the world as we see it, and so I was very fortunate. I had textbook parents, and I didn't have to go through those challenges that you did, but I can still empathise with people's troubles, and I still feel that I can feel what they've been
No, I'd
through.
say the same about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to go through those things to feel the pain that they've gone
But
through.
also we've seen the pain that you shared
Yeah.
of that. So that's what probably maybe as well helps us to understand it. Even though we've not been through it ourselves.
Yeah. So
we
when I
understand
say to you that it would have been better, I'm sure you would have rather not gone through that. I suppose that all our lives are in evolution, aren't they? And whatever you take from that, but it's just from my point of view, because I didn't go through that. I think I feel sorry that you had to, because I can still empathise without having gone through it. Does that
No,
make
I do,
sense?
I do.
I still think like the every cloud saying it's still true here, because even
Of
as
course it is.
like personally, I've not been through the struggles and troubles that you have, but equally the things I have had have made me who I am today, and trying to be faced with that, especially before and having to deal with all that stuff, has made me understand myself better. But it's also made me a better friend and being able to relate to people and just be there and just have those conversations. I think that it's really important for personal development as a whole, and just.
But
a
what
lot
I
of
also
things.
love, which I think is great, Hunter, is that because you've spoken out, I know that you've got friends at uni who are also struggling. You've got them then to acknowledge that their issues, and then they've gone to ask for help.
Yeah, and I think that honestly one of the biggest things that I've seen at college or university is just, I mean, it's such a melting pot of people, is that everyone there is really struggling with something. They've all got their own things going on, and being able to relate to that now and having been through that and just being able to just, I feel like me speaking about it openly, as you say, has really encouraged a lot of other people.
But I
to
think
speak
that's a
openly
really
about
good
it.
point. Going back to everything that you've said so far, right? So you can have had a life like yours where you grew up with loads of struggles, or you can have a life like Dad's where he's grew up with pretty much a really easy life, you would say, comparably. But
Charmed.
yeah.
Charmed, that's what I'd say.
And
I think
probably
he
the
did,
same.
he didn't know how his bowel moved, in fairness.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But-
there was that whole thing. But,
But all that aside, you make a really, really good point, which is all of us have had struggles, whether we've had an easy life, a comparably easy life, or a comparably difficult life. You're saying all these people you've met at uni, everybody has struggles, which is why you can't be so hard on yourself, and you've got to give yourself a break, because it doesn't matter what your life looks like. We all have struggles, and
I
we
know.
all find things difficult.
And you're right. And again, I had textbook parents, and my parents were married for 56 years, and then my dad had a stroke and then passed away. So, no matter what I was right up until that
Didn't
point,
matter.
suddenly
Absolutely.
my dad's gone.
No one's immune to life.
And it's like, how do you deal with that? And when I got over the grief of that, and I thought, well, okay, if when it comes to the day that my mum passes away, I've been through the grief of losing my dad. It's the first person close to me that I've ever lost. Then I'm prepared for my mum passing away. And yet, when my mum passed away, it was worse.
Yeah.
Because suddenly I've got no parents, and I didn't think about this at the time. I've got no parents, and actually, I've stepped up. I'm next in line now. So and that, and again,
jolly
and
thought.
Oh, no, but it is. But
No,
then,
but I get
but
what
then I
you're
started
saying.
thinking
Yeah, it's
about my
another
own
realisation.
mortality. Then, and up
Yeah.
until that point,
Yeah.
I was Superman. I was never going to die. But now suddenly, but it's just life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think something else I want to throw in there as well is that it's not comparable. You can't compare your own struggles and what's real to
100%.
other people,
Exactly.
because I think that a lot of people, and even things that we've heard with phobias people have or things like that, can seem really small and trivial. Or some people are like, oh, that's so stupid. How are you scared of that?
And people might feel silly in themselves because they think, I know it's ridiculous compared to
exactly.
someone who's been through something awful, but it doesn't matter.
No matter how small it is, it's real to
100%.
them, and the effects it has on them are real and valid.
And we're living
regardless
our
of the
lives,
scale
so
of
that's
it.
what matters.
And do you know what?
100%.
And that is just such a fantastic point, Hunter, that it's absolutely that. It doesn't matter, because I think some people will say to us as well, don't they, that, oh, I feel really bad because my issue isn't that big. You know, if your life isn't perfectly happy, and then do something about it. And then it is true that, I think some people think that I've got to have this catalogue of challenges that I've been through, issues, really to warrant the fact that I don't feel great, and to be able to vocalise it and speak out about it. No. Even if the smallest thing is troubling you, then speak out about it.
And it's valid.
And it is valid.
Because life isn't easy. And
No.
that's not one thing that, we're not saying. Life is not easy. And that's why you've got to do things and put things in place to try and create that happiness, which is why, as well, we're saying give yourself a break, Don't just expect to be happy. If you're not, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know that. I remember it brings me back to Custard Lady when we worked on this morning, and we helped a lady who had a phobia of custard, and everybody thought it was really amusing, and the lady couldn't speak without gagging, and yet when we met her, it really had held her back.
Oh, massively so. Just little things that we take for granted, like going out for a meal. And she couldn't go out for a meal because if she went out for a meal anywhere and she saw custard, she had to leave. She wanted to throw up. So there's so many things.
Supermarket trips were difficult because you never know when you're going to see custard. And then, going for petrol stations. Apparently now that they all have fridges, little custard cartons of trifles with custard.
Everything's just so linked in ways that we don't even realise. And when you hear something like custard, you just think initially it's just custard. It's just
not a big deal.
A handful of uses, but then really everything is.
But
just
again,
so linked.
Goes back to what we were saying about comparing yourself to perfect, because people might have looked at her life and thought that's something and nothing, like her life's great. But again, we don't see people's day-to-day challenges.
Absolutely.
We don't realise, like you said, everybody is carrying something and what people are going through.
Yeah.
And the one thing that comes out of that, by the way, is how important it is to always be kind. Always, because you just don't know what someone is carrying.
I think. Do you think Custard Lady is a very good example, because on the surface,
Custard Lady.
She
had a name.
What's she called?
Michelle.
Michelle.
Yeah.
You refer to her as Custard Lady. Michelle.
To be fair to Michelle, because when we helped her overcome her fear of custard,
She couldn't even say the
she did
word.
have a tattoo on her arm that said Custard Lady.
So she probably wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
It's all right.
So anyway, Michelle. People looking in will see when she sees custard, they'll see the panic attack that she has, they'll see the anxiety and everything like that, but they won't realise that in her day-to-day life, while she'll look like she's completely normal and everything's fine, that she's constantly on the search going, is there custard nearby?
Well, that's the thing.
And
People,
the
when they
anxiety you feel
living
just in
in
case
fear.
you see something. Exactly.
When they did it, people were saying like, "Oh, just avoid it." But that avoidance causes a stress all the time.
And she's constantly
planning
looking out for it because she has to
100%,
try and protect herself from it.
So bringing this all back together, Speakman team, I suppose that what we've been talking about today is kind of giving ourselves give yourself a break. We all have something, and that's okay, and that no perfect exists.
And I'd just like to interject there, if that's okay, to say on that note, whilst you're giving advice there, which is fantastic advice,
Thank you.
is that the only person you can compare yourself to is yourself. We can make progress, we can make changes in ourselves and grow as a person, and that's the only person you should be comparing yourself to. Because the truth is, we know ourselves and we know how well we're doing, and we know that we can be doing better than we did yesterday, or we can be working towards a better version of ourselves.
And that is the only fair comparison.
Absolutely.
Because, you might be comparing your, let's say it was a race, or your year 5 to someone else's year 10. So they're always going to be ahead of you. And we never know when someone else started the journey.
And you're only on your own journey. We're here living our life on our journey. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to anyone else, which can have detrimental effects because we're not getting the full picture and the full story.
So myth busting, I would say the truth is there is no such thing as perfect. That's a myth bust right there.
That's absolutely true. There's no such thing as perfect.
There is no.
And in fact, one of the great things about that, if you remember that story of Dolly Parton, I love Dolly Parton, that Dolly Parton entered a Dolly Parton lookalike competition and she lost.
It's true. It's brilliant. But yeah, so I think that's a big takeaway. And then sort of concluding in, this is our handbook to happiness. What would be
before we conclude that, Eva? Can I just say that one thing that is one of my favourite sayings is that, and everyone's aware of it, is one day we will look back at this and laugh. And that's so important, because the things that hold us back and have power over us is the thing that make us fearful. But when we can laugh at the situation that caused that, and we can laugh at ourselves more so, we can let things go.
We absolutely can.
And as you know, that you can't be anxious and laughing at the same time.
No, that's true. Laughter is a real antidote to anxiety.
So, in a bid to make people laugh, I want to share with you.
Oh, he's making me nervous. Here we go.
First one on the podcast.
Yeah.
I would like to share with you that you might not know this, because this isn't my normal day-to-day stuff, but I started a website for chickens that wanted to date. Do you know what I mean? Chickens that wanted to date. And whilst it wasn't my normal job, it was just a way of trying to make ends meet.
Oh, God. I mean, to be fair, it's not as bad as some of the ones you've told, but...
Yeah, but you see, look, if you can laugh, you cannot be anxious and laughing.
What if that didn't make us laugh? What happens if that didn't make us laugh?
Set the bar lower.
It's the first one, so I'll work on my material for future ones.
I was worried then you were going to go, it's the first one, so I'll give you another one. That was where I was worried that was going, so I'm glad that you didn't say that.
Well,
so before he does try, and I can see he's trying to shoehorn another joke in. Take home for what would be, okay, so we're putting a page into our handbook to happiness. Mm-hmm. What are we putting on our first page of our handbook to happiness? What would it be under?
It's got to be you are not broken.
Give yourself a break.
Mm-hmm.
Only compare yourself to yourself.
I would say be proud of any growth you make as well, because life's hard.
Focus on your own growth.
From that and growing from it is really...
Don't lose sight. Don't lose sight of where you started.
Yourself. Yeah.
I love that.
What you said about writing down your achievements. Write down things that you've done. Only compare yourself to yourself and acknowledge your progress and your journey, rather than looking at anyone else's when you don't have the full picture.
So have we agreed on a headline then for this? The page for the book?
The page for the book
what's the headline?
I think it's give yourself a break. I think that compare yourself to yourself, because perfect doesn't exist.
Who is it that says comparison is the thief of joy? Was that like Shakespeare or something like that?
I think it might be Gandhi. Could be completely wrong. Maybe it Gandhi.
Oh, it might be. I don't know. Well, whoever said that, you were right.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say.
So the headline, this page for our handbook for happiness is give yourself a break.
And on that note, I've so enjoyed our first episode of our family podcast.
Yeah, it's been fun.
That's made me
I'm glad
happy.
you could be here as well.
Yeah, awesome.
Glad Hunter could join us.
Thanks so much for joining us. Wherever you're listening to this podcast today, do be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and we'd be incredibly grateful of a 5-star review.
Oh, and don't forget to recommend our podcast to your family and friends.
And if you'd like to have a look at some more free resources, take a look at our website, nickandeva.com.
If you want to drop us a question, we'd love to hear from you. Send it to admin@speakman.tv.
And you can follow us. We're at the Speakmans on all social media platforms. On YouTube, we're Handbook to Happiness Pod. If you are struggling, do be sure to speak to your general practitioner. And all that's left to say is that we appreciate you spending time with us today.